December 1996. The smell of chemical emulsion hangs in the air of the massive Rochester factory, a scent so familiar it has become invisible to the 20,000 souls who breathe it daily. Outside, snow falls on a parking lot that stretches for miles, filled with the cars of middle-class Americans living the dream George Eastman promised them a century ago. Inside Building 9, the production lines hum their perpetual song, spitting out 12 million rolls of film every single day. Yellow boxes with red letters, the most recognizable packaging on planet Earth. The Eastman Kodak Company stands at the summit of an empire worth $31 billion. 90% of every photograph taken in America passes through their chemistry. They own the color yellow in consumer consciousness. Their research labs employ more PhDs than most universities. Wall Street analysts use words like invincible and monopoly and forever. The dividend checks flow to shareholders like clockwork, fat and reliable as winter snow in upstate New York. But this is merely the facade, a magnificent, gleaming, perfectly painted facade. Because in a basement laboratory in that same Building 9, locked in a filing cabinet that has not been opened in 21 years, sits a machine the size of a toaster, a crude prototype with exposed wiring and a digital cassette tape for storage, a device that captures images without film, without chemistry, without the very substance that built this $31 billion cathedral to silver halide crystals. The employee who built it, a young engineer named Stephen Sasson, was told by executives to keep it quiet, to bury it, to forget it existed. They succeeded. The world forgot. But the laws of physics and economics do not forget. And by the time those yellow boxes start disappearing from store shelves, by the time the factory lines fall silent and the parking lots empty, it will be far too late to excavate what was deliberately buried. This is not a story about disruption from the outside. This is the story of a company that invented its own execution device, looked at it with clear eyes, understood exactly what it meant, and chose to lock it away until the chamber was already filling with gas. The toaster-sized camera, the buried future, the choice to die slowly rather than transform quickly. 21 years of willful blindness bought them time, yes, but time to do what? To prepare? To adapt? No, time to decay, to atrophy, to convince themselves that the old magic would last forever, that chemistry would always triumph over silicon. That memory was more powerful than mathematics. They were wrong, and the price of that wrongness would be measured not in millions or billions, but in the complete and total erasure of one of the most dominant corporations in American history. The kind of erasure where even the name survives only as a ghost, a nostalgia trigger, a cautionary tale whispered in business schools about the suicide of giants. This is the autopsy of Eastman Kodak, not a competitor killed us story. Not a market-shifted story. This is a self-inflicted wound story, the documentation of corporate suicide in slow motion. And it begins, as all great tragedies do, with a dreamer and a simple promise. Rochester, New York, 1880. A 26-year-old bank clerk named George Eastman works by day with ledgers and arithmetic, and by night in his mother's kitchen with glass plates and silver nitrate. Photography exists, but it is the domain of professionals and obsessive. The process requires hauling 50 pounds of equipment, coating wet plates with toxic chemistry, exposing them before they dry, developing them immediately. It is an art form of suffering and precision, accessible only to those willing to endure both. Eastman sees something else. He sees millions of people who want to freeze time, to capture the faces of children before they grow, to document the world before it changes. But they cannot. The barrier is not desire. The barrier is chemistry's complexity, equipment's weight, the process's unforgiving nature. Every photograph requires expertise that takes years to develop, chemicals that can blind you if mishandled, timing so precise that a few seconds of delay ruins everything. He spends 3 years experimenting. His mother's kitchen becomes a laboratory that reeks of sulfur and acid. The wallpaper peels from chemical fumes. His hands develop burns that never fully heal, the skin perpetually raw and cracked. His clothes are stained beyond redemption. The neighbors complain about the smells drifting through shared walls. His mother worries he is wasting his life on an impossible dream. But Eastman is possessed by a vision so clear it feels like prophecy. Photography will be universal. It will be simple. It will belong to everyone. By 1880, he cracks it. A dry plate process that creates stable photographic surfaces you can manufacture in advance, store for weeks, transport across continents, use when convenient. The plates maintain their light sensitivity without requiring immediate coating and development. This single innovation collapses the barrier between professional and amateur. You no longer need a darkroom on site. You no longer need to mix chemicals in the field. You can buy prepared plates, use them at your leisure, send them away for processing. He files the patent, quits his job at the bank. At 32 years old, he burns every bridge to chase an idea most people consider already solved. Photography works, they tell him. Why fix it? Because it does not work for everyone, he answers, and everyone is the only market worth capturing. He starts manufacturing dry plates in a rented loft above a music store on State Street. The business grows slowly at first. Professional photographers appreciate the convenience but remain skeptical of quality. Can a factory-made plate really match one freshly coated by an experienced photographer? Eastman obsesses over consistency. Every batch must be identical. Every plate must perform exactly as promised. He personally inspects production, rejecting entire batches over minor imperfections. He understands that trust is the only currency that matters when you are selling something people will use to preserve their most precious memories. By 1884, he has improved the process enough to interest investors, raises capital, builds a proper factory on the outskirts of Rochester, hires chemists and engineers, men who share his obsession with precision and repeatability. But dry plates are still just an incremental improvement. The fundamental problem remains. Photography is too complicated for ordinary people. The equipment costs hundreds of dollars, equivalent to months of wages for a working family. The chemistry is dangerous. The technique requires training. If Eastman wants to democratize memory, he needs something radically simpler. 1888. The camera that changes everything. He calls it the Kodak, a word that means nothing, derived from nothing, chosen because it sounds crisp when spoken aloud, because it starts and ends with the same strong letter, because it can be pronounced identically in any language on earth. The name is pure marketing genius. No borrowed prestige, no reference to existing products, no ties to geography or heritage, just a sound. Sharp, memorable, ownable. Years later, he will explain his thinking. I knew a trade name must be short, vigorous, incapable of being misspelled to an extent that will destroy its identity, and in order to satisfy trademark laws, it must mean nothing. Inside the small box sits a roll of paper coated with photographic emulsion, 100 exposures on a single roll. The mechanics are elegant in their simplicity. You point the camera at your subject, you press a button, you advance the film with a key. No chemistry to mix, no plates to change, no darkroom needed. When you finish the roll, you mail the entire camera back to Rochester. Kodak's technicians develop your photographs, reload the camera with fresh film, send everything back within 2 weeks. The camera costs $25. Development and reloading costs $10 per roll. The slogan writes itself. You press the button, we do the rest. 6 words that capture the entire value proposition. Eastman is not selling cameras. He is selling freedom from expertise. He is selling the ability to preserve memory without becoming a chemist, without hauling equipment, without mastering an art form. He is selling inclusion in a process that has always excluded ordinary people. Revolutionary does not capture it. This is the democratization of memory itself. Before Kodak, photographs are formal affairs. You go to a studio, sit rigidly while a professional operates complex equipment, maintain an uncomfortable pose for the long exposure time, wait weeks for results. The photographs that exist are stiff, staged, lifeless. After Kodak, photographs become casual, spontaneous, real. You capture your children playing in the yard, your wife laughing at a joke, your friends at a picnic. The mundane becomes precious because it can be frozen. The temporary becomes permanent because there is finally a machine simple enough for anyone to use. Within 5 years, Eastman has sold 100,000 Kodak cameras. Within 10 years, the company name becomes a verb. I Kodaked the wedding. Let me Kodak the children. Can you Kodak this moment? The brand transcends itself and becomes language. The ultimate achievement of marketing, the point where a product becomes so synonymous with its function that the boundary dissolves entirely. People do not take photographs anymore. They Kodak. But Eastman is not satisfied. Paper film has limitations. It tears easily during loading or rewinding. It scratches when handled. It degrades in humidity, the emulsion separating from the substrate. The images lack the sharpness that glass plates provide. If he wants photography to truly become universal, he needs a better substrate, something flexible but durable, transparent but stable, light enough to roll but strong enough to survive the mechanical stress of advancing through a camera. He partners with Henry Reichenbach, a chemist willing to experiment with celluloid, a new material being developed for various industrial applications. They spend 2 years testing formulation, mixing different ratios of nitrocellulose and camphor, adjusting the thickness to balance flexibility against strength, coating the celluloid with photographic emulsion, testing how it responds to light, to chemicals, to tension and stress, and the mechanical wear of repeated use. The work is painstaking. Most attempts fail. The celluloid tears during processing. The emulsion does not adhere properly. The images come out blurred or streaked. Chemical reactions between the celluloid and emulsion create unpredictable defects. But in 1889, they succeed. A celluloid film that is thin, flexible, transparent, and stable, coated with gelatin and silver halide crystals so fine they can capture details the human eye struggles to perceive. This film can be rolled tightly, stored compactly, advanced smoothly through a camera mechanism without tearing or scratching. It is superior to paper in every measurable way, and it opens possibilities beyond still photography. Thomas Edison sees the potential immediately. He is working on motion pictures, trying to create a device that can capture and display moving images. But he needs a flexible film that can move rapidly through a camera, stop for a fraction of a second to expose each frame, then advance to the next frame 16 times per second. Glass plates cannot do this. Paper is too fragile. Tears under the mechanical stress. Kodak's celluloid film is perfect. Edison becomes a major customer, purchasing thousands of feet of film for his kinescope experiments. And suddenly, Eastman's invention is not just preserving still memories, it is creating an entirely new medium. Cinema itself is built on Kodak film. By 1900, Eastman Kodak introduces the Brownie camera. $1 for the camera, 15 cents for a roll of film, $1 to own the ability to capture memory, 15 cents to preserve a day at the beach, a birthday party, a quiet afternoon with family. The pricing is revolutionary. Eastman is deliberately taking a loss on camera sales to build the installed base, understanding that profit comes from film, from the recurring purchase that happens every time someone wants to preserve a moment. The Brownie sells 150,000 units in the first year. Within 5 years, 1 million Americans own a Brownie. Photography has been completely democratized. The barriers have been obliterated. Anyone with $1 can now participate in the preservation of their own history. The genius, the true stroke of brilliance that will define Eastman Kodak for the next century is not the camera. The genius is the business model. Give them the camera cheap, or even at a loss, sell them the film forever. Every photograph taken is a small recurring payment to Rochester. Every vacation, every holiday, every wedding, every graduation, every funeral. The film must be Kodak. The developing should be Kodak. The printing should be Kodak. Vertical integration becomes religion. Control the entire ecosystem, and you control the revenue in perpetuity. This is not just a business. This is a tax on memory itself, and people pay it willingly, happily, because the value proposition is so clear. For a few cents, you can stop time. For $1, you can preserve what would otherwise vanish. The cost is trivial compared to what you receive. And Eastman, understanding human psychology with the precision of a master, has made the process so simple that price sensitivity evaporates. You do not think about the cost of film when you are capturing your daughter's first steps. You just buy the film. By 1920, Eastman Kodak employs 15,000 people. The Rochester factory complex spreads across dozens of buildings, connected by underground tunnels and elevated walkways. The company builds its own railroad to transport raw materials and finished products, its own power plant to ensure uninterrupted production, its own fire department to protect the facilities. Rochester transforms from a small upstate New York City into a company town, economically dependent on a single industry, a single vision, a single man's obsession with making memory affordable and universal. George Eastman himself becomes one of the great industrialists and philanthropists of the age. He lives simply despite enormous wealth. No mansion, no yacht, no ostentatious displays. He resides in a comfortable but modest home, works long hours, reinvests profits into the business and into the community. He pours money into the University of Rochester, transforming it from a small denominational college into a world-class research institution, endows it with millions, builds new facilities, funds professorships. He establishes the Eastman School of Music, which becomes one of the premier conservatories in America, creates dental clinics across Europe, providing free care to children who would otherwise grow up with rotting teeth and chronic pain. He builds parks, hospitals, libraries. By 1930, he has given away more than $90 million, an almost incomprehensible sum in that era, equivalent to well over $1 billion in modern currency. The money flows from chemistry and light, from silver halide crystals suspended in gelatin, from the fundamental human desire to stop time, to hold on to what is slipping away, to prove that moments happened and mattered. Kodak film captures World War I, the trenches, the mud, the horror documented by photographers who carry Kodak equipment through hell. The Roaring Twenties, all those images of flappers and speakeasies and jazz clubs preserved on Kodak stock. The Great Depression, the breadlines and dust storms and desperate faces, frozen by photographers working for the Farm Security Administration shooting Kodak film. And then in 1932, at age 77, suffering from degenerative spinal disease that leaves him in constant agony and increasingly immobile, George Eastman writes a brief note. "To my friends, my work is done. Why wait?" He places the note on his desk, picks up a pistol, and shoots himself through the heart. The suicide is methodical, unsentimental, pragmatic. His work is finished, the company is thriving, his philanthropy is established and endowed to continue in perpetuity. Continuing to live means only continued suffering with no purpose. So he stops. The decision is consistent with everything about the man. Practical, efficient, focused on outcomes rather than process. The company does not falter. If anything, Eastman's death proves how well he built the machine. Kodak does not depend on its founder's charisma or genius anymore. It has become a system, a process, an institution larger than any individual. The film keeps flowing off the production lines. The yellow boxes keep filling store shelves. The cameras keep selling. The dividend checks keep arriving like clockwork. The company he created has achieved a kind of immortality that he himself could not. Through the 1930s and 1940s, Kodak entrenches itself further into American life. They introduced Kodachrome film in 1935, the first practical color film for amateur photographers. The development process is extraordinarily complex, requiring specialized equipment that only Kodak labs possess, which means every roll of Kodachrome must be sent to Rochester for processing. The colors are rich, stable, archival. Kodachrome slides become the standard for serious amateur photography. For professionals, shooting for National Geographic and Life magazine. The film stock has a look, a feel, a quality that becomes synonymous with a certain kind of American aesthetic. Warm skin tones, saturated blues and reds. A slight softness that makes even mundane subjects look timeless. World War II transforms Kodak from a successful company into a strategic asset. The military needs film for reconnaissance, for documentation, for intelligence gathering. Kodak produces specialized films that can capture images from high altitude, in low light, through haze and cloud cover. They manufacture aerial camera systems that help win the war. Cameras that can photograph enemy positions from miles away with enough detail to count individual soldiers. After the war, the government considers Kodak so essential to national security that antitrust regulators largely leave them alone despite obvious monopoly power. The company is too important, too integrated into defense infrastructure, too critical to risk disrupting. The post-war boom is Kodak's golden age. Suburban families with disposable income want to document their lives. The baby boom creates millions of parents desperate to capture their children's fleeting childhoods. Every family gathering, every vacation, every milestone must be photographed. And Kodak is there for all of it, providing the tools and the chemistry to freeze these moments before they vanish into time's river. The ritual becomes embedded in American culture. On Christmas morning, before the children open presents, Dad loads film into the camera. Kodak film, always Kodak, bought in packs of 3 or 5 rolls because you will need them. The camera itself might be a Kodak Brownie or a Kodak Instamatic, but even if it is a Canon or Nikon, the film inside is Kodak. The yellow box is as much a part of the holiday as the tree and the presents. The process has weight, substance, physicality. You finish a roll and you feel accomplishment. 24 exposures or 36 exposures of captured time, wound tight in that little canister. You take it to the drugstore or the Photoshop, fill out a form with your name and phone number, hand over the film and some money. The person behind the counter gives you a receipt. Come back in 3 days, they say. Sometimes a week if it is busy. Those 3 days are filled with anticipation. Did the photos turn out? Were people blinking? Was the focus right? You cannot know. The uncertainty is part of the experience, and when you return to pick up your developed prints, there is a moment of revelation. Opening that white envelope with the negatives tucked into a sleeve, spreading the prints across the counter, seeing your memories made tangible. Sometimes the photos disappoint. The birthday cake is overexposed. The vacation sunset is underexposed. Someone blinked in the family portrait. But sometimes magic happens. A casual snapshot captures a moment of genuine joy, a real smile, an unguarded expression that reveals something true about the people you love. And that photo goes into an album or a frame, becomes part of the family archive, the visual history that will survive you. This is what Kodak sells. Not just film, but a process, a ritual, a way of interacting with memory that feels substantial and real. The delayed gratification is not a bug. It is a feature. The uncertainty adds value because it makes the successful photos feel earned. The physical prints have weight, can be touched and held and passed around. Memory has mass. By 1976, Eastman Kodak employs 120,000 people worldwide. The stock trades at $150 per share, adjusted for later splits. Annual revenue exceeds $9 billion. Profit margins on film hover around 70%, an almost obscene level of profitability that reflects total market dominance. They control every step of the process. They manufacture the film, sell the cameras, develop the photos, sell the photo paper, sell the chemicals for home darkrooms, license their patents to competitors. Vertical integration so complete that competitors cannot find an opening. The Rochester headquarters sprawls across 200 acres of prime real estate, building after building, dedicated to research, manufacturing, administration. The campus has its own infrastructure, its own ecosystem, its own internal logic. Scientists in white coats work in laboratories equipped with technology that rivals any university. They experiment with new emulsion chemistries, testing thousands of formulations to extract another point of improvement in color accuracy or light sensitivity. Engineers design cameras and optical systems, pushing the boundaries of what mechanical precision can achieve. Chemists formulate new developers and fixers, balancing processing speed against image quality. Walk through that campus in 1976 and you feel permanence. These buildings are solid, built to last centuries. Red brick and limestone, architecture that says we were here before you were born and we will be here after you die. The lawns are manicured, the hedges trimmed with geometric precision. The parking lots are full, thousands of cars belonging to people who expect to work here for 30 years, retire with a pension and a gold watch. See their children work here too. The cafeterias serve hot meals to thousands of employees every day, subsidized by the company, another benefit of working for an institution that prints money. The company newsletter reports record profits, new product launches, employee promotions. There is a rhythm to it, a sense that this will continue forever because it has always continued. Kodak is not a business, it is infrastructure. Kodak is not a company, it is certainty. Kodak is as permanent as gravity, as inevitable as sunrise. But in Building 9, in a small laboratory that most employees do not even know exists, an engineer named Stephen Sasson is working on a project that will prove permanence is an illusion and certainty is a lie. Sasson is 30 years old in 1975, talented but not famous, competent but not legendary. He joined Kodak's research division a few years earlier with a degree in electrical engineering from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. He is one of hundreds of engineers employed to tinker with emerging technologies, to explore ideas that might or might not lead anywhere practical. His supervisor, Gareth Lloyd, gives him an unusual assignment: experiment with a charge-coupled device, a CCD chip that converts light into electrical signals, and see if you can build a camera that captures images without film. The assignment is speculative, almost whimsical. No one expects it to lead anywhere practical. CCD technology is primitive, developed for astronomy and scientific applications, not consumer photography. The chips are expensive, thousands of dollars each. The resolution is terrible, orders of magnitude worse than film. But Kodak's research division has always explored far-out ideas, maintaining a portfolio of moonshot projects alongside incremental improvements to film chemistry. This is just another experiment among hundreds. Sasson is told to tinker, to see what is possible, to document his findings for potential patent applications. He spends months designing and building, working mostly alone in his small lab, scavenging parts from other projects, from junked equipment, from electronics surplus stores, soldering circuits by hand, writing rudimentary software to control the image sensor and transfer data to storage. The device that emerges in December 1975 is absurd looking. 8 pounds of equipment, jury-rigged together, circuits exposed, wires running everywhere. Roughly the size of a toaster, maybe a bit larger. Runs on 16 nickel-cadmium batteries that need frequent recharging. The CCD sensor is tiny, captures images at a resolution of 0.01 megapixels, 100 pixels by 100 pixels. For comparison, a decent 35mm film photograph has a resolution equivalent to about 20 megapixels, 2,000 times better. The captured image data gets stored on a digital cassette tape, the kind used for early digital audio recording. The whole process takes 23 seconds per image. Point the camera, press the button, wait while the CCD converts light to electrical signals, wait while those signals transfer to the tape, wait while the tape advances, prepare for the next shot. There is no screen to review what you have captured. To see the images, you must remove the cassette tape, insert it into a special playback device Sasson also built, connect that device to a television set, and wait while the image slowly appears on the screen, one horizontal line at a time, taking another 23 seconds to fully render. The image quality is atrocious, black and white only, grainy beyond belief, each pixel visible as a distinct block, so low resolution that fine details are completely lost, faces barely recognizable. The entire contraption is impractical, unmarketable, essentially useless as an actual product, but it works. It captures images without film, without chemistry, without any of the infrastructure that Eastman Kodak has spent 90 years perfecting. Sasson demonstrates the device to his immediate supervisors. They are impressed in an academic sense. Interesting technology, they say. Clever engineering. Good work. File the patents, write up the research, add it to the portfolio. They understand this is a proof of concept, not a product. The gap between this crude prototype and something consumers would buy is enormous, probably unbridgeable. But when Sasson demonstrates it to higher-level executives, men who run divisions and make strategic decisions, the response changes. They gather in a conference room. A dozen men in suits who have spent their careers managing a film company. Sasson sets up his prototype, explains how it works, shows them the camera capturing an image, plays it back on a TV screen. The image appears line by line, grainy and low resolution, but undeniably real. A photograph without film. Silence fills the room, not the comfortable silence of people thinking, the uncomfortable silence of people realizing something they wish they had not seen. Then, questions begin. How much would this cost to manufacture at scale? Sasson estimates around $10,000 with current component prices, but that would drop dramatically with mass production and technological improvement. Semiconductor prices are falling fast, following Moore's law. Give it a few years and the cost could be hundreds instead of thousands. How long until the quality matches film? This is the question that matters most. Sasson admits he does not know for certain, but the technology is improving exponentially. Sensor resolution doubles every 18 months. Processing speed increases. Storage capacity grows. In 10 years, maybe 15, digital could match or exceed film quality. Maybe sooner if investment accelerates development. What about the business model? If there is no film to sell, how do you make money? Sasson does not have a good answer for this. He is an engineer, not a business strategist. He has built a technology demonstration, not a product strategy. Maybe you sell the cameras at higher margins, he suggests. Maybe you sell printing services. Maybe you license the technology. He is reaching, uncomfortable under their scrutiny. The executives nod politely, thank him for his work, tell him to continue research, file patents, document everything. Then they dismiss him from the room. What happens next is not documented in meeting minutes or memos because documentation would create legal exposure. But the broad strokes are clear from later interviews and testimony. The executives discuss the prototype. They understand exactly what they are looking at. This crude device, refined and miniaturized over the next decade or two, would destroy the film business. Not might destroy, would destroy. Because digital photography, once it achieves acceptable quality, is simply superior in almost every way that matters to consumers. No recurring film costs. Instant feedback so you know immediately if the photo worked. Unlimited exposures without buying more film, easy editing on computers, simple sharing through emerging networks. The only advantage film has is current quality and archival stability, and the quality advantage is temporary, guaranteed to erode as semiconductor technology improves. They face a choice. Option 1. Invest heavily in digital photography. Accelerate development, lead the transition, cannibalize the film business before someone else does. Accept that short-term profits will suffer as film sales decline, but position Kodak to dominate whatever comes next. Option 2. Protect the core business. Maximize the film division's profitability while it lasts. Invest in digital defensively. filing patents to block competitors but not actively accelerating the technology's development or commercialization. Milk the film business for every possible dollar, then transition to digital, later when forced to by market conditions. The choice seems obvious in hindsight. Of course you embrace the future. Of course you cannibalize yourself before others do. But in that conference room in 1975, with film generating billions in high-margin revenue and digital offering only theoretical future profits with cannibalized margins, the choice is not obvious at all. The executives are rational actors optimizing for known variables. Film is certain. The revenue is predictable. The margins are fat. The competitive moat is unassailable. Digital is speculative. The technology is primitive. Consumer acceptance is unknown. The path to profitability is murky. Shareholders reward certainty and punish speculation. Wall Street values consistent earnings growth, not risky bets on unproven technology. Every incentive, every pressure, every metric that defines success in corporate America points toward protecting the core business. And there is another consideration, rarely spoken aloud but always present. The executives in that room have spent their careers in film. Their expertise, their value to the company, their professional identity, all of it is built on chemistry and optics and mechanical engineering. Digital photography would require different expertise. Electrical engineering, software development, semiconductor manufacturing, the skills that made them successful would become obsolete. New people with new skills would rise. The balance of power would shift. This is not mentioned in the discussion, but it does not need to be. Everyone understands. So they make a decision. Keep the prototype quiet. Do not publicize it. Do not discuss it outside this room. File patents defensively to prevent competitors from using the same technology without licensing. Continue research into digital imaging at a measured pace, maintaining technical competence but not pursuing commercialization aggressively. Do not disrupt the golden goose. Extract every possible dollar from film while you can. And maybe, just maybe, by the time digital becomes truly viable, you will have built enough brand equity and market power to transition successfully. This decision, made in a conference room in 1975 by men whose names are lost to history, will be studied in business schools for decades as one of the great strategic blunders in corporate history. But in the moment, it feels prudent, conservative, responsible. They are protecting 120,000 jobs. They are protecting billions in shareholder value. They are protecting a company that is woven into the fabric of American life. How could moving aggressively into speculative technology with no clear path to profitability be the responsible choice? The prototype goes into a filing cabinet. Sasson continues working on other projects, other technologies that might or might not lead somewhere. The patents get filed and granted, adding to Kodak's portfolio of intellectual property. And the company continues printing money from film sales while the digital future gestates in laboratories around the world. In Japan, Sony's engineers are working on similar technology. They do not have a film business to protect. Sony's revenue comes from consumer electronics, televisions, radios, tape recorders, the Walkman. They see digital imaging as an opportunity, not a threat. A new category of consumer electronics they can sell alongside their other products. In 1981, Sony announces the Mavica, a still video camera that captures images onto a floppy disk. The quality is poor, worse than Sasson's prototype, barely acceptable even for casual use. But Sony is committed. They see the trajectory. They understand that semiconductor technology improves exponentially, and what is crude today will be excellent tomorrow. They invest, they iterate, they improve the technology year by year. Canon and Nikon watch these developments with interest. They are primarily camera and optics companies. They sell some film, but it is not their core business. Film's decline would hurt them, but not kill them. They have expertise in optics and mechanical engineering that would transfer to digital cameras. They begin investing in digital sensor technology, partnering with semiconductor companies, gradually improving resolution, gradually reducing costs, gradually making digital photography practical. Kodak watches this happen. They are not blind. They see Sony and Canon and Nikon investing in digital. They read the technical papers, track the patents, monitor the market, but they convince themselves they have time. Film quality is still far superior to digital. Consumers prefer the look of film, the colors and tonality that digital cannot yet match. Professional photographers swear by film, refuse to trust their livelihoods to primitive electronic sensors. Digital is a toy, a gadget for tech enthusiasts, not a serious threat to real photography. And anyway, Kodak has patents that cover fundamental aspects of digital imaging technology. Sasson's work and subsequent research have generated a portfolio of patents that anyone making a serious digital camera will need to license. Kodak will profit from digital even if they do not lead it. Competitors will have to pay royalties. The company will collect revenue without the risk of investing heavily in an uncertain market. This logic is seductive and ultimately fatal, because market leadership in new technology does not automatically flow to the company with the best patents. It flows to the company that executes best, that understands consumer needs, that moves fastest, that shapes the market through aggressive investment and relentless iteration. Patents are defensive assets, useful for extracting licensing fees and blocking competitors. But they do not build market share or establish brands or create customer loyalty. And Kodak, burdened by its massive profitable film operation, cannot move fast, cannot be aggressive, cannot take risks. Every dollar invested in digital is a dollar that could have gone to improving film chemistry or expanding film production or marketing film products. Every engineer assigned to digital camera development is an engineer not working on advancing the core business. Every executive hour spent on digital strategy is an hour not spent optimizing film operations. The incentives are all wrong. The structure is all wrong. The culture is all wrong. Through the 1980s, Kodak's film business continues to boom. Revenue grows from $9 billion to $15 billion. They introduce new films with improved characteristics. High-speed films for low-light photography that can capture images in conditions that previously required flash. Ultra-fine grain films for professional use that rival the sharpness of large-format cameras. Specialty films for scientific and medical applications. The research labs continue refining the chemistry, extracting every possible improvement from silver halide technology, pushing the boundaries of what chemical photography can achieve. The company's dominance seems unshakable. Market share in North America exceeds 90% for film sales. Kodak is infrastructure. When someone says they need film, they mean Kodak, film the same way someone asking for tissue means Kleenex. The brand has achieved that ultimate state where it represents the category itself, and they do invest in digital, but tentatively, defensively, without real commitment. In 1986, Kodak releases the DCS, a professional digital camera system created in partnership with Nikon. It uses a Nikon film camera, body-modified to accept a digital sensor and storage system. The camera captures images at 1.3 megapixels, far better than Sasson's prototype, but still inferior to film. It stores images on a separate hard drive that you must carry in a shoulder bag, connected to the camera by a cable. The entire system weighs over 10 pounds and costs $20,000. This is not a consumer product. This is a tool for photojournalists who need to transmit images quickly from remote locations. Wire services and newspapers buy them because the ability to send a photo electronically within minutes of capturing it is worth the cost and inconvenience. The camera works, it sells to its niche market, but it does not threaten film. It is a specialty tool serving a tiny fraction of the photography market. Kodak can tell itself they are participating in digital while not disrupting the profitable core business. This pattern repeats throughout the late 1980s and early 1990s. Kodak introduces digital products, but always aimed at professionals, always expensive, always positioned as supplements to film rather than replacements. They market digital cameras to photojournalists, to medical imaging specialists, to industrial applications where instant feedback justifies high cost. They do not market them to families who want to capture birthday parties and vacations. Those customers should keep buying film. Meanwhile, the infrastructure for digital photography is being built piece by piece. Not by camera companies, but by computer companies and software companies pursuing their own agendas. Personal computers become common in homes. By 1990, millions of American families own a PC, usually for word processing and simple games, but increasingly for more sophisticated tasks. And while these early machines are primitive by modern standards, they are capable of displaying images, editing images, storing images. The ecosystem for digital photography is emerging without Kodak's involvement or control. Adobe releases Photoshop 1.0 in February 1990. The software runs on Macintosh computers and costs around $900. Suddenly, anyone with a computer and this software can manipulate images in ways that previously required a professional darkroom and years of expertise. You can adjust brightness and contrast with sliders instead of chemical baths. You can crop and rotate with mouse clicks instead of carefully cutting prints. You can remove red eye, correct colors, combine multiple images into composites, apply filters and effects that would be impossible in a traditional darkroom. The software is revolutionary. Professional photographers and graphic designers adopt it immediately. But to use Photoshop, you need digital images. And in 1990, most people do not have a way to create digital images except by scanning film photographs, a cumbersome process that defeats much of the purpose. Scanners are expensive, slow, require technical knowledge to operate properly. The workflow is shoot on film, develop the film, scan the prints or negatives, then edit in Photoshop, then print on a photo-quality printer, which also barely exists in 1990. This is Kodak's window. This is the moment when they could have dominated. They have the brand. They have distribution through photo retailers worldwide. They have the technology patents. They could have released affordable consumer digital cameras in 1991 or 1992, priced aggressively to build market share, and owned the digital photography market before Canon and Sony established themselves. But they do not. They are still too focused on protecting film. 1991. Kodak announces Photo CD, a system they hope will bridge the analog and digital worlds. The concept is clever. You shoot on film as always, but when you bring the film in for development, Kodak also scans the images and puts them on a CD-ROM. You get your prints like normal, but you also get a disc containing digital versions of your photos. You can view these digital images on your computer or on a photo CD player connected to your television. It is Kodak's attempt to have it both ways. Digital convenience with film quality, and most importantly, continued film sales. You still buy film, still shoot the film, still bring it in for development. The digital component is an add-on, not a replacement. Photo CD preserves the entire film ecosystem while adding digital features customers are starting to want. The system fails to gain significant market share. Consumers find it confusing. The workflow is cumbersome, no better than traditional film in most ways. The photo CD players are expensive and add another device to the living room. And fundamentally, it misses the core appeal of digital photography, which is immediate feedback and zero marginal cost per image. Photo CD still requires buying film, shooting carefully, because each exposure costs money, finishing the roll even if it takes weeks, taking it for development, waiting for results. You still do not know if your photos turned out until days after capture. The digital aspect feels tacked on, an afterthought, not integral to the experience. But the failure of Photo CD does not trigger a strategic rethink at Kodak. Instead, executives see it as confirmation that consumers are not ready for digital. The market has spoken. They tell themselves, people still want film. We were right to move cautiously. The film business continues generating billions in profit. Why fix what is not broken? 1994, Apple releases the QuickTake 100, manufactured by Kodak but sold under Apple's brand. It is one of the first consumer digital cameras aimed at regular people, not professionals. Resolution, 0.3 megapixel. Storage, 8 images in internal memory before you must connect to a computer and download them. Price, $750. No LCD screen for reviewing images, no removable storage, resolution so low that prints larger than 4 by 6 inches look terrible. By any objective standard, the QuickTake is a bad camera. The images are grainy, low in color fidelity, only adequate in good lighting. You can store only 8 images before needing to offload to a computer. The price is astronomical for what you get. But it sells anyway because it offers something film fundamentally cannot: instant feedback. You take a photo, you download it to your computer within minutes. You see it immediately on screen. If it is bad, you delete it, and the deletion costs nothing. If it is good, you can email it to someone on the other side of the world. This instant feedback loop is transformative in ways that are hard to articulate but impossible to deny once experienced. You learn faster because you see results immediately. You experiment more because failed experiments are free. You take more photos because there is no film cost constraining you. The quality is worse than film, but the experience is better. And for many use cases, experience trumps quality. That same year, 1994, compact flash memory cards become available. Suddenly, digital cameras can store dozens or hundreds of images on removable media. The storage limitation evaporates. And once you can store hundreds of images on a card that costs $50 and lasts for years, the cost calculation shifts dramatically. The camera might cost $700, but after that initial purchase, images are free. Every photo costs nothing. Compare that to film. A roll of 24 exposures costs about $6 for the film and another $6 for development, $12 per roll. If you shoot 10 rolls a year, you are spending $120 annually on film and development. The digital camera pays for itself in under 6 years, even at that high initial price. And if you shoot more than 10 rolls per year, the payback period is even shorter. 1995. Casio releases the QV10, the first consumer digital camera with an LCD screen on the back. This changes everything. You can now review your photos immediately without connecting to a computer. The screen is tiny, only 1.8 inches diagonal, and the resolution is poor. But it is enough. You take a photo, glance at the screen, see that your subject was blinking or the framing was off, delete the photo, take another one. This simple feedback loop is addictive. It transforms photography from an uncertain process where you do not know if your photos worked until days later, into an interactive experience where you learn and improve in real time. Kodak is finally forced to respond. They cannot ignore digital anymore. The market is developing without them. Competitor cameras are selling. Consumers are adapting to the new technology faster than anyone anticipated. In 1995, Kodak releases the DC-40, their first consumer digital camera sold under the Kodak brand. It costs about $900 and captures images at 0.38 megapixels. The camera is well built, technically competent, uses Kodak's expertise in optics and color science to produce images that reviewers say have better color than competing cameras. But Kodak markets it wrong. They position it as a supplement to film, not a replacement. Use digital for casual snapshots, they suggest in advertising, but use film for important memories. They cannot bring themselves to admit that digital is simply better for most use cases. They are too invested, psychologically and financially, in film's superiority. The marketing message is confused. If film is better, why buy a digital camera? If digital is good enough, why buy film? Consumers are left uncertain about what Kodak actually wants them to do. The late 1990s are a strange twilight period for Kodak. Revenue continues to grow, hitting $19 billion in 1999. Film sales are still strong in absolute terms. The stock price is healthy, trading around $70 per share. Wall Street remains bullish. Analysts write reports praising Kodak's consistent profitability and strong market position. But look closer at the composition of revenue and you see warning signs. Film unit sales are flat or declining slightly year over year. All the revenue growth comes from price increases and a shift toward disposable cameras, which have higher margins but lower customer satisfaction. The profitable customers, the enthusiasts who shoot multiple rolls per month, are increasingly experimenting with digital. They buy a digital camera for casual shooting, for situations where they want instant feedback or zero film cost, but they keep shooting film for serious work. This hybrid approach is unstable, a transition state that cannot last. As digital quality improves, the situations where film is necessary shrink. Eventually, the balance tips and they stop buying film altogether, and digital cameras are improving fast. Moore's law is doing its work exactly as predicted. Sensor resolution doubles every 18 months, 2 megapixels in 1998, 3 megapixels in 2000, 5 megapixels in 2002. The quality is approaching acceptable for serious amateur work. Not as good as film, not yet, but good enough for most purposes. Good enough to print 8x10 images that look fine. Good enough to satisfy most consumers most of the time. The internet accelerates digital adoption. Email becomes ubiquitous. Websites proliferate. People want to share photos online, and film photographs must be scanned first, which is annoying and expensive. Digital photos can be attached to emails or uploaded to websites instantly. The convenience is overwhelming. And suddenly, film's quality advantage matters less because most photographs are being viewed on low-resolution computer monitors anyway. Who cares if film has better dynamic range when you are looking at the image on a monitor that can only display 72 dots per inch? Pick up that yellow box again, the one you loaded into your camera with such familiar confidence for decades. By 2000, it is still there on store shelves. Still yellow, still recognizable, still ubiquitous in drugstores and camera shops. But the context is shifting. The shelf space is shrinking. Retailers are dedicating more square footage to digital cameras, to memory cards, to photo printers that let you print digital images at home. The film section, which used to occupy entire aisles with dozens of varieties and sizes, is condensing to a single shelf with limited selection. The box itself is unchanged. Same cardboard, same printing, same plastic canister, inside with the film tongue protruding. But the world around it has changed. The customers browsing the camera aisle are younger now, and many of them have never used film. They do not understand the ritual of loading the camera, advancing past the leader, shooting carefully because every exposure costs money, rewinding when finished, taking it somewhere for development. They have grown up with digital convenience, with instant feedback, with the ability to take hundreds of photos and keep only the good ones. They see film as archaic, inconvenient, expensive, something their parents used. For older customers, those who have been using film for decades, there is cognitive dissonance. They know film produces better images, they can see the difference in prints, the richer colors, the finer grain, the better dynamic range. But their children and grandchildren do not care about these technical qualities. The young people are taking hundreds of photos with their digital cameras, deleting the bad ones, sharing the good ones online, emailing them to friends and relatives. They are creating more memories, documenting more moments, even if the individual image quality is lower. And that trade-off, quantity and convenience over quality and ritual, proves more appealing than Kodak ever anticipated. The yellow box sits on the shelf gathering dust. The cardboard fades slightly under fluorescent lights. The product inside is exactly the same as it was in 1960, in 1980, in 1995. The same Kodak chemistry, the same process, the same delayed gratification. But what was once essential is now optional. What was once universal is now niche. What was once infrastructure is now nostalgia. 2001 marks the inflection point, the moment when the decline becomes irreversible. This is the year digital camera sales surpass film camera sales globally for the first time. The market has decided digital is not a niche anymore. It is not a supplement, it is the future, and that future is arriving faster than Kodak anticipated. The company is structured for a world where film dominates and digital is peripheral, but that world no longer exists, and the transition is happening at exponential speed. The stock price collapses, falls from $70 in late 2000 to $30 by late 2001, erasing billions in market capitalization. Wall Street finally understands what is happening. The film business is dying. Kodak's revenue is about to fall off a cliff. The company announces layoffs. 6,000 jobs eliminated in a single round. Manufacturing plants closed. The Rochester community reels. These are not abstract numbers. These are neighbors, friends, family members who believed their jobs were as secure as gravity. Margaret Wilson worked on the production line for 28 years, loaded film into canisters, quality-checked the final product, took pride in the knowledge that her hands touched products that would preserve memories for families across America. She gets the layoff notice on a Tuesday morning. The severance package is decent, but cannot compensate for the loss of identity. The sudden realization that the company she gave most of her adult life to no longer needs her. James Chen was a chemist in the research division, PhD from MIT, brilliant work on improving emulsion chemistry, held 17 patents. He gets reassigned to digital imaging research, a field where his expertise is largely irrelevant. The chemistry that made him valuable is becoming obsolete. He could retrain, could learn about semiconductor sensors and digital processing, but he is 52 years old, and the prospect of starting over in a different specialty is exhausting. These stories repeat across Rochester. Families that had 3 generations working at Kodak, expecting the 4th generation to do the same, suddenly facing an uncertain future. The company that was bedrock, that was certainty itself, is crumbling, and there is nowhere else in Rochester to work at that scale, at that wage, with those benefits. The local economy contracts immediately. Car dealerships see sales decline. Restaurants lose customers. Real estate values drop as people leave the city looking for work elsewhere. CEO Daniel Karp stands before analysts in 2002 and announces a restructuring plan. The company will invest more heavily in digital products. They will reduce dependence on film through aggressive cost-cutting and facility closures. They will adapt, survive, emerge as a profitable digital company. The presentation is polished and confident. Charts showing the transformation timeline, graphs projecting digital revenue growth, talking points about leveraging brand strength in new markets. The strategy sounds reasonable, but behind the scenes, the company is trapped by its own success. Film still generates billions in cash flow even as unit sales decline. The remaining customers are price insensitive, willing to pay premium prices for a product they prefer. Killing the film business faster than market forces require seems like madness. The hope is for a slow, managed transition. Maintain film profitability while building digital business, eventually reaching a point where digital revenue replaces film revenue and the company continues thriving. This hope is fantasy. Technological transitions do not happen slowly when the new technology is fundamentally superior and cheaper. The shift is not linear, it is exponential. And Kodak is about to experience what exponential decay feels like when you are anchored to a dying business. The years 2003 through 2008 blur together in a cascade of cuts and closures and diminishing relevance. Each year brings the same story with different numbers. Digital camera sales double. Film sales decline 20 or 30%. Kodak announces another round of layoffs. Another manufacturing plant closes. Another division gets sold or shut down. The company shrinks steadily, inexorably. A slow-motion collapse that everyone can see, but no one can stop. 2003. Digital camera sales double year over year, while film sales drop 21%. Kodak announces the closure of several manufacturing plants and the elimination of 6,000 more jobs. The cuts are painful but not deep enough, because the cost structure was built for film production at massive scale. The factories, the chemical plants, the distribution networks, all of that infrastructure is suddenly obsolete. You cannot just turn off 1/3 of a chemical facility. You cannot easily retool a film production line to make anything else. The fixed costs remain while revenue disappears. 2004. The company announces they will stop selling traditional film cameras in North America and Europe. They will focus entirely on digital. The announcement is presented as a bold strategic move, evidence that Kodak is serious about transformation. But it is really just accepting reality. Film cameras are not selling anymore. Retailers are giving that shelf space to digital cameras. Why continue manufacturing products that sit in warehouses unsold? But focusing on digital does not solve the fundamental problem. Kodak is now a minor player in a crowded market with no competitive advantage. They make good digital cameras, sometimes very good. But so do Canon and Nikon and Sony and Samsung and Panasonic and a dozen Chinese manufacturers whose names most consumers have never heard. The market is brutally competitive. Margins are thin. Innovation cycles are measured in months, not years. You must constantly release new models with better specs at lower prices, or you lose shelf space to competitors. And the profit structure is completely different from film. A digital camera is a one-time purchase. You buy it, use it for 3 or 4 years, maybe buy another one. There is no recurring revenue. No consumables that must be purchased again and again. The razor and blades model that made Kodak wealthy does not exist in digital cameras. You make money once and then must convince the customer to buy again years later. Compare that to film, where every photograph generated revenue, where customers bought film regularly for decades, where loyalty meant continuous income. Revenue falls below $14 billion in 2004. The stock trades at $25, down 2/3 from the 2000 peak. Another round of layoffs brings the workforce down below 50,000. The Rochester campus that once held 70,000 employees now echoes with emptiness. Entire buildings stand vacant, windows dark, parking lots with weeds growing through cracked asphalt. The company sells buildings to raise cash. Some get converted to other uses. Others sit empty for years, monuments to vanished prosperity. Antonio Perez becomes CEO in 2005, brought in from Hewlett-Packard to execute a turnaround. He understands digital technology, sees the severity of the situation with fresh eyes unclouded by nostalgia for the film era. He makes a bold decision: pivot away from cameras entirely and focus on inkjet printers. Kodak will become a printing company. They will sell printers at low cost and make money on ink cartridges. The razor and blades model resurrected in a different form. The logic is sound. Consumers are taking thousands of digital photos and storing them on computers and memory cards, never printing most of them. Kodak can capture that latent demand by making home printing easy and affordable. Sell printers for $150 and ink for $30. If consumers print regularly, the ink revenue adds up quickly. It is recurring revenue, the business model Kodak understands. But the execution is disastrous. HP, Epson, Canon, and Brother already dominate the printer market. They have established distribution, brand recognition in this category, economies of scale in manufacturing. Kodak is late, undercapitalized, and burdened by a brand identity that screams cameras and film, not office equipment. Nobody walks into a store thinking, I need a Kodak printer. The brand association is wrong. The marketing cannot overcome decades of conditioning. The printers themselves are well designed. Engineers applied Kodak's color science expertise to produce prints with excellent color accuracy. The ink genuinely costs less than competitors, a legitimate selling point. But none of it matters. Consumers do not trust Kodak in this category. Sales disappoint quarter after quarter. The division loses money. The grand pivot that was supposed to save the company becomes another weight dragging it down. And then comes the death blow. Not from Canon or Nikon or Sony. The death blow comes from a device that barely anyone considers a camera threat. 2007, Apple releases the iPhone with a 2-megapixel camera. The quality is terrible by standalone camera standards. Grainy in low light, limited dynamic range, no zoom, no manual controls. But it is good enough for casual snapshots. And it is always in your pocket because it is also your phone, your music player, your internet device, your communication hub. The convenience is unbeatable. Why carry a separate camera when your phone can take acceptable photos? Why remember to bring a camera when the device you carry everywhere can capture moments? The iPhone camera is not better than a dedicated digital camera, but it is better than not having a camera at all, which is what happens when you forget to bring your camera or choose not to carry it, because it is bulky and inconvenient. Within 3 years, iPhone cameras improved dramatically. 3 megapixels, then 5, then 8. The quality becomes legitimately good, surpassing many point-and-shoot digital cameras. Apps like Instagram make photo sharing addictive. Suddenly, everyone is a photographer, taking dozens of photos per day, sharing them instantly with friends around the world. The smartphone is not a camera that makes phone calls. It is a computer that happens to include an increasingly good camera, and it makes standalone cameras redundant for 90% of use cases. Other manufacturers follow Apple's lead. Android phones with cameras flood the market. Samsung, HTC, Motorola, everyone includes cameras in their phones and competes on camera quality as a key differentiator. The standalone digital camera market collapses. Why buy a camera for $200 when your phone takes comparable photos? Kodak's camera sales evaporate. Their revenue free falls. $13 billion in 2006, $10 billion in 2007. $9 billion in 2008, $7 billion in 2009. The decline is not linear, it is accelerating, each year worse than the last. The cuts accelerate to match. Entire divisions are eliminated, product lines discontinued. The company sells assets desperately. They sell the healthcare imaging division for $2 billion, using the cash to fund operations and pay down debt. They sell the document imaging business. They license the Kodak brand to other manufacturers who make Kodak-branded cameras and printers and batteries. The brand name survives, but hollowed out, attached to products Kodak does not even make anymore. You can buy a Kodak digital camera in 2010, but it is manufactured by a Chinese company who paid for the right to use the name. You can buy Kodak printer ink, but it is made by someone else. The name persists as a brand licensing opportunity, a trademark with residual value, but the substance behind the name has dissolved. By 2010, Kodak employs fewer than 19,000 people worldwide. The stock trades below $4 per share. They have mortgaged buildings, sold equipment, depleted cash reserves. Credit rating agencies downgrade the debt to junk status. The company that was infrastructure, that was certainty itself, is now a penny stock, a distressed asset, a turnaround story that Wall Street no longer believes. Bankruptcy consultants are brought in. They review the books with the cold precision of coroners performing an autopsy. The verdict is inevitable. The company is insolvent. Assets are insufficient to cover liabilities. Operating losses exceed $1 billion per year. Cash is burning at unsustainable rates. Unless something dramatic changes, bankruptcy is unavoidable. The only question is timing. The board explores options. Selling the patent portfolio becomes the last hope. Kodak owns over 1,000 patents related to digital imaging, accumulated over decades of research. Surely those have value. Surely someone will pay billions for the intellectual property created when Kodak still had world-class research labs and unlimited budgets. The patents do have value, but not billions. Technology companies are willing to pay something to acquire defensive patents, to protect themselves from lawsuits, to gain leverage in cross-licensing negotiations. But transformative value requires patents that cover actively used, highly profitable technology. Most of Kodak's patents are aging, covering foundational concepts that have been superseded by newer approaches or worked around by competitors. The patent portfolio is worth hundreds of millions, not billions. Not enough to save the company, not even close. Walk into a camera store in late 2011. That yellow box is still there, tucked in a corner, dusty and faded. The packaging looks tired, worn. The cardboard has sat under fluorescent lights for so long that the yellow has bleached to a sickly pale shade. The red letters faded to dull orange. The product inside is manufactured in a factory running at 5% capacity. Workers who know their jobs will disappear soon. Pick up that box one final time. Feel the weight. Lighter than you remember, as if the cardboard has thinned. as if the substance inside has evaporated. The plastic canister rattles when you shake it. The film is still inside, still good. Kodak never compromised on quality. The chemistry is precisely formulated, the emulsion carefully coated, the product exactly as it would have been in 1996 or 1976. But quality does not matter when the market has moved to different technology entirely. This box is no longer a portal to memory. It is a museum artifact that you can still purchase, but probably will not. It is a symbol of permanence that turned out to be temporary. It is everything Kodak believed would last forever. Reduced to clearance price nostalgia. The price sticker shows it is marked down, 40% off. Managers trying to move inventory that no one wants. January 19th, 2012. Eastman Kodak files for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Assets, $5.1 billion. Liabilities, $6.75 billion. The announcement is made in a terse press release issued before markets open. No fanfare, no sentimentality. Just legal language describing insolvency and creditor protection. 131 years of history, reduced to a balance sheet that does not balance. Rochester wakes to the news and the reaction is strange. Not shock, because everyone saw this coming. Not grief, because the grief has been distributed over a decade of layoffs and closures. More like resignation. The final acceptance of something long anticipated. Kodak is dead. The icon is gone. The company that built this city, that employed generations of families, that made Rochester synonymous with photography, no longer exists in any meaningful way. The bankruptcy process is brutal and methodical, conducted by professionals for whom this is just another corporate failure, another fee-generating engagement. Kodak's remaining assets are catalogued, valued, prepared for liquidation or sale. The digital imaging patent portfolio attracts interest from a consortium of tech companies. After months of negotiation and legal wrangling, the patents sell for $525 million. Less than hoped, more than feared. The consortium includes Apple, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, companies that built the digital future, while Kodak clung to chemistry. The companies that now dominate photography are purchasing the intellectual property from the company that invented digital photography and refused to pursue it. The irony is so perfect, it could be fiction. Kodak's patents, filed defensively in the 1970s and 1980s to prevent competitors from using digital imaging technology without licensing fees, are now being sold to those same competitors as liquidation assets. The technology that could have been the foundation of Kodak's digital dominance, that could have made them the Apple of photography, becomes someone else's treasure. Patents that might have generated billions in product revenue instead generate $500 million in bankruptcy asset sales. The difference between those numbers, between what might have been and what actually was, represents one of the greatest value destructions in corporate history. The bankruptcy court approves a restructuring plan. Kodak will emerge as a much smaller company focused on commercial printing and packaging. The consumer photography business is completely abandoned. Film production is spun off as a standalone entity, serving a tiny market of professionals and enthusiasts. The Rochester headquarters is sold. The sprawling campus that symbolized American industrial might is divided, sold piecemeal, repurposed for uses that have nothing to do with photography. Building 9, where those yellow boxes were manufactured by the millions, sits empty now. The production lines are silent. The machinery that once hummed 24 hours a day, producing 12 million rolls of film daily, is rusted, obsolete, waiting for scrap dealers. The smell of chemical emulsion is gone, replaced by the musty odor of abandonment. Pigeons nest in the rafters. Windows are broken. The floor is littered with debris. September 2013. Eastman Kodak emerges from bankruptcy. The company now employs fewer than 8,000 people. The market capitalization is less than $200 million. For comparison, at the peak in 1990, Kodak was worth $28 billion. The value destruction is 99.3%. Almost complete erasure of wealth. Shareholders who held stock through the bankruptcy are almost completely wiped out. Bonds are worth pennies on the dollar. Thousands of retirees see their pensions cut. The new Kodak is unrecognizable. It makes commercial printing equipment, offset presses, and digital printing systems sold to businesses. It provides services to the packaging industry, printing on boxes and labels. These are fine businesses, profitable in small scale, but they bear no resemblance to the Kodak that dominated consumer photography for a century. The name survives as a brand, a logo, a memory. But the substance is gone. The company that made memory tangible no longer participates in memory creation at all. The stock resumes trading under the symbol KODK. It fluctuates between $2 and $10 per share depending on quarterly results and market sentiment. Day traders speculate on turnaround potential. Occasionally, there are short squeezes when social media campaigns drive brief rallies that have nothing to do with business fundamentals. But underlying reality is weak. Revenue is measured in billions, but profit is measured in millions. The company is a shadow, a remnant, a ghost that refuses to fully die. Rochester struggles to reinvent itself. The city tries to rebuild its economy around healthcare and education, leveraging the university and medical center that Eastman's philanthropy helped create. Population declines from its peak. Economic vitality does not return to 1990 levels. The city is smaller, quieter, diminished. Buildings that once housed Kodak operations stand empty or repurposed. The factory complexes are converted to offices, apartments, storage facilities. The company town without the company, trying to find new identity. And what about those yellow boxes? Production continues at a single remaining plant, running a few shifts per month to fulfill specialty orders. Professional photographers still use film for certain applications. The aesthetic of film grain, the color rendering of specific film stocks, the archival quality of properly processed film, these characteristics remain superior for specific artistic purposes. But the market is tiny. What was once hundreds of millions of rolls per year is now measured in hundreds of thousands. A niche within a niche, kept alive by nostalgia and artistic preference. You can still buy Kodak film in 2024 if you look hard enough. Specialty camera stores stock a few rolls. Online retailers ship it to enthusiasts who appreciate the analog process. The packaging has changed slightly. Modern barcodes and updated logos, but the yellow remains. The price has increased dramatically. What cost $6 in 2000 now costs $15 or $20. The economics have shifted. Film is now a luxury product for people who choose it deliberately, not a universal medium for preserving memory. This third and final appearance of the yellow box exists not in a customer's hands, but in ruins and remnants. Picture it in a landfill somewhere outside Rochester. Mixed with trash from a household that cleaned out their basement, found boxes of expired film purchased years ago and never used, threw them away. The cardboard disintegrates slowly under rain and sun. The plastic canister cracks, breaks into fragments. The film inside, still chemically active, still capable of capturing images if properly exposed and developed, is destroyed by light exposure during disposal. Ruined. The potential to freeze moments, to preserve memories. Eliminated not through use, but through obsolescence. Or picture the yellow box in a collector's display case at a photography museum, perfectly preserved behind glass. The colors still vibrant because it was stored in darkness and controlled temperature. A curiosity from the analog era. Museum visitors, most of them young people who have never used film, stop to read the placard. Kodak film, circa 1996, the foundation of consumer photography for nearly a century. The visitors nod, snap a photo of the display with their smartphones, move on. The irony is thick enough to cut, or picture it in a drawer in someone's home. The owner bought it in 1998, intended to use it on a family vacation, postponed the vacation, forgot about the film. The camera that would have used it was donated to Goodwill years ago. The drawer gets opened occasionally during cleaning, but the film remains. Too nostalgic to throw away, a connection to a past when photography required thought and care. Too obsolete to use. An artifact from a world that no longer exists, a monument to expired possibility, to the moments that might have been captured but never were. Stories like Kodak's are silent warnings about the danger of loving your business model more than you love solving problems. If you appreciate these corporate autopsies and want to understand the history behind the ruins, consider subscribing to this channel. Your support allows us to continue investigating the rise and fall of empires built by human ambition. Let us return to the deeper lesson embedded in Kodak's collapse. This is Kodak's true legacy, not the photographs they enabled, though those are real and valuable, not the memories they preserved, though those matter to millions of people. The legacy is the lesson about loving your business model more than you love solving problems, about protecting yesterday's profits instead of pursuing tomorrow's opportunities, about convincing yourself that dominance is permanent when permanence does not exist in competitive markets. Kodak invented digital photography in 1975. Steven Sassen's prototype proved the concept worked. The technology was viable. The future was visible. But visibility is not the same as acceptance. And Kodak's executives, faced with a choice between cannibalizing their profitable film business or protecting it, chose protection. They chose short-term certainty over long-term survival. They chose quarterly earnings over generational adaptation. This was not stupidity. This was rational decision-making within a broken incentive structure. Wall Street rewards quarterly results and punishes long-term investments that depress near-term earnings. Shareholders demand dividends and consistent profit growth. Employees need stable jobs. Communities need thriving employers. All of these constituencies demanded that Kodak protect the film business. And Kodak complied. They did what everyone expected, what made sense according to every conventional business metric. And it killed them. Because markets do not care about your incentives. Technology does not care about your convenience. Consumers do not care about your history or your challenges or your need for gradual transition. They care about what works best for them right now. And once digital photography worked well enough, consumers abandoned film en masse. The transition happened faster than Kodak anticipated because exponential change always happens faster than linear institutions can adapt. Business schools teach Kodak as innovation failure. But that framing is wrong. Kodak did not fail to innovate. They invented the innovation and buried it. This is not about insufficient research and development spending or lack of technical capability. Kodak's research labs were world-class. This is about organizational inability to kill a profitable business even when you know it is doomed. This is about being trapped by your own success, unable to escape the gravitational pull of high-margin revenue, even when that revenue is guaranteed to disappear. Imagine the alternate history. 1976. Kodak's CEO announces a bold plan to shareholders. The company will invest heavily in digital imaging technology. We will develop consumer digital cameras aggressively. We understand this will cannibalize film sales. Short-term profits will suffer. The stock price will decline. But Kodak will lead the digital revolution because we understand it is inevitable. We invented this technology and we will own its future. Rochester would have struggled. Film manufacturing jobs would have disappeared in the 1980s instead of the 2000s. The local economy would have contracted earlier, the pain compressed into a shorter period. But Kodak might have survived. They might have become the Apple of photography. They might have owned digital cameras the way they owned film. Their brand equity, their distribution networks, their relationships with consumers, all of those advantages could have transferred to digital if they had moved first and fast. Instead, they moved last and slow. They let Sony and Canon and Nikon establish themselves. They let smartphones commoditize the category. They squandered every advantage. And by the time they committed fully to digital, they were just another manufacturer competing on price with no differentiation and no moat. The moat was always film. That recurring revenue, those 70% margins, the fact that every photograph generated ongoing income. Digital cameras are one-time purchases with commodity margins. No moat, no recurring revenue, no competitive advantage. The lesson is not about predicting the future. Kodak predicted the future perfectly. Sasson's prototype in 1975 showed them exactly what was coming. The lesson is about having the courage to act on predictions, even when action is painful, even when it destroys your current business, even when Wall Street punishes you and employees hate you, and your community suffers in the short term, because gradual decline is not better than rapid transformation. It is just slower and more painful, and ultimately more destructive. Some companies managed this transition. IBM was a hardware company that sold mainframes, then personal computers. When those businesses matured, IBM sold the PC division to Lenovo and transformed into a services and software company. The transition was painful, but successful. Netflix mailed DVDs and built a hugely profitable business. Then, they deliberately destroyed that business to become a streaming company, cannibalizing their own revenue to pursue a better future. Amazon constantly cannibalizes its own retail operations to expand into new markets, accepting short-term pain for long-term dominance. These companies survive because they are willing to destroy what they built to build something new. They understand that competitive advantage is temporary. They know that today's moat becomes tomorrow's liability. They have the courage to kill their successful businesses before someone else does. Kodak was not willing. They loved their creation too much. They believed chemistry was eternal. They convinced themselves that brand loyalty and quality would overcome technological inevitability. They thought their dominance was permanent because it had lasted for so long, and they were catastrophically wrong about all of it. What remains of Kodak today? Fragments, echoes. The brand exists, licensed to manufacturers who make cameras and photopaper that have nothing to do with Rochester. The company still operates, employing a few thousand people in commercial printing, a business unrelated to consumer photography. The stock still trades, bouncing between penny stock status and occasional speculation-driven rallies when social media rumors circulate. The name persists in cultural memory, though younger people increasingly do not recognize it or associate it only with obsolescence. In Rochester, the old Kodak buildings stand mostly empty. Some have been repurposed as tech incubators, where startups pursue the digital future that Kodak should have owned. Others converted to office space, apartments, storage facilities. The city has tried to rebuild around healthcare and education, leveraging institutions Eastman's philanthropy created. Population has declined from its peak. Economic vitality remains below 1990 levels. The city is smaller, quieter, diminished by the collapse of its economic foundation. And somewhere in those empty buildings, if you explored deep enough, you might find old filing cabinets, rusted shut, locks broken, covered in dust and debris. Inside, perhaps, still sit the original schematics for that first digital camera. The blueprints for Kodak's salvation, locked away because salvation looked too much like suicide. The papers are yellow now, brittle with age. The ink has faded to near illegibility. The diagrams are barely visible. But the core idea remains if you look closely. You can capture light without chemistry, preserve memory without film, freeze time without yellow boxes. The idea was always true. The technology was always inevitable. The only question was whether Kodak would lead the revolution or be consumed by it. They chose consumption. Slow, agonizing, completely avoidable consumption. They chose to protect what they had built instead of building what came next. And the market, indifferent to legacy and sentiment and history, moved on without them. This is what corporate death looks like when it unfolds over decades. Not a sudden collapse, but a gradual fade. Revenues declining year after year. Layoffs becoming routine, the cuts deeper each time. Buildings emptying floor by floor. Stock price bleeding slowly like a wound that never heals. The name surviving longer than the business. The brand outliving its utility, the logo appearing on products made by companies who merely licensed the ghost's reputation. And in houses across America, in drawers and closets and storage boxes, those yellow boxes persist. Dozens of them in some homes, purchased in bulk when they were on sale, stored for future use that never came. The owners never used them all because digital arrived and made them unnecessary. The film expired years ago, the chemicals degrading past usability. The possibility evaporated. The moments that might have been captured remained uncaptured because the technology designed to freeze them became obsolete before the opportunity arose. Those drawers are Kodak's real tombstone, filled with unused product, unrealized potential, expired possibility. The company built an empire on making memory tangible and permanent. They created a ritual around stopping time, a process with weight and substance. Photography had mass, had physicality, had chemistry you could see and smell. And then they watched as memory became intangible, as stopping time became instant and effortless, as the ritual dissolved into digital convenience that required no thought and no skill and no delayed gratification. They sold certainty in an uncertain world and discovered that certainty itself is uncertain. They believed chemistry was forever and learned that forever is shorter than you think when technology improves exponentially. They thought dominance was destiny, and found out that success guarantees nothing except the attention of competitors who will eventually surpass you unless you surpass yourself first. The final question hanging over Kodak's ruins is unanswerable, but unavoidable. What if they had said yes in 1975? Yes, this digital camera will destroy our film business. Yes, it will hurt terribly in the short term. Yes, Wall Street will punish us. Yes, Rochester will suffer. But yes, this is the future, and we will lead it or die resisting it. What if they had embraced digital immediately, invested billions, accepted declining film profits as the price of survival, transformed themselves from a chemistry company into a technology company? What if they had become the dominant player in digital cameras, then led the transition to smartphone photography, then owned the software and services that manage digital images? We cannot know, because they chose the other path. They chose comfort over courage. They chose preservation over innovation. They chose to die slowly rather than change rapidly. They chose familiar pain over unfamiliar opportunity, and the market executed them for it. All that remains is dust and regret, and one final yellow box sitting in a museum behind glass with a placard explaining what it used to mean. The placard does not mention Stephen Sasson or the prototype he built in 1975. It does not mention the executives who saw the future and locked it in a filing cabinet. It does not mention the conscious choice to protect quarterly earnings instead of pursuing generational transformation. It does not mention that this is not a story about technological disruption, but about corporate suicide, about a company that invented its own death and then spent 21 years pretending they had not. The placard just says, Kodak film, circa 1996, the foundation of memory for 3 generations, until it was not.